Dear students, good morning. I hope you all are in fine health. So, as you know that we had completed our syllabus before winter vacations and we were to start our revision. So, today we will be starting our revision from chapter 1, Emergence of the Colonial Economy. In this chapter, we will revise all the important aspects and all the important questions. So, our first question is the development of the means of transport and communication was one of the goals of Lord William Bentinck. In this context, discuss any 4 points to show the need of modern transport to the East India Company. So, what do we comprehend from this question? We comprehend that we are to write any 4 points which show the need of modern transport to the East India Company. What does modern transport consist of? In this chapter, that is chapter number 1, modern transport consists of railways. So, we are to write any 4 points about the need of railways. So, our first point is road and river transport were found inadequate to cope with the need of increasing trade. These should only be used in fair weather. India's devastating rainy season, accompanied by floods and dry summer, were great impediments to smooth and continuous transport of goods. Hence, building of railways was planned. Road and river transport was slow. On the other hand, railway transport was rapid. Goods could move quickly from port to market and vice versa. So, our first point is that more than 300 years ago, there were only road and river transport. After the success of industrial revolution and after the discovery of steam engine and with the arrival of the Britishers in India, new technologies also came in India. So the first new technology was railways. So as road and river transport was inadequate, means it could be used only in fair weather, and in rainy season road and river transport could not be used. So therefore railway was planned because it was rapid and it could be used in all seasons also. So we were to use railways for transporting goods from ports to markets and raw material from the village market to ports. Second is railway was most modern and permanent source of link between different parts of the vast subcontinent. So at that time railway was the most modern source of transport and it was also a permanent source which linked ports and markets of India. Thirdly, rail routes would not only modernize transport, it would penetrate into the interior rural markets. British goods could be dumped in village hut, that is bazaars, and raw material like jute, cotton, tobacco, and others could be brought from these areas. So, third point, it was basically commercial in nature. As we all know that Britishers came in India for commercial purpose, so railway would be used for dumping or it means transporting final products in village markets, and from village markets they could procure raw material like jute, cotton, tobacco, and other for their own industries. Fourthly, in the early decades, the railway building was planned keeping these points in view. So, the railway transport was planned keeping the other 3 points in view. Hence, port cities like Bombay and Calcutta were linked with the interior market. So, fourth point start from here. Port cities like Bombay and Calcutta were linked with the interior markets. So, we all know that Mumbai and Kolkata at that time they were known as Bombay and Calcutta respectively. They are the port cities, and so the port cities were connected with the interior rural markets by the railways. So it is on page number 1.6 that answer to this question is given. Next point is, with reference to the image given above, explain any four negative impacts of railways in the Indian economy. So this is the picture. Actually, this is a kind of cartoon. It is a cartoon of railways. So we are to refer to this cartoon and we are to explain any four negative impacts of the railways. So the answer to this question is given on page number 1.7. So demerits. Firstly, the result of railway construction were damaging for Indian economy. The grantee system led to exploitation of India by the British companies. They enjoyed full profit from the railway construction and in addition 5% on the amount invested by them. Thus, the construction of railways served the imperial interest and economic exploitation of India. So, first demerit is that it had a devastating impact on Indian economy. So, the grantee system by which the railways were built in India. What was grantee system? It was a kind of system wherein the British capitalists they invested their money in the construction of railways, and the British government in India paid 5% interest on their capital along with all the profits that they procure from railways. So this was a hugely devastating, it has a huge devastating impact on Indian economy. Second is, we are to refer to the point number 3 here. The railways were constructed for the benefit of the foreign merchants. The Indian raw material like tea, jute, and others were brought to different ports for export and import of finished product of England for the Indian markets. The railways were also used for the movement of army from one center to another. The Indian didn't enjoy material benefit from it, but they were taxed to meet the cost of the railways. So, the railways were constructed for the benefit of the foreign merchants. That is, they were to transport their finished product from ports to the markets, and they were to procure raw material from the village markets, which was to be transported to ports. And second point was that railways were constructed for the movement of army from one part of India to another, that is for annexing other princely states and to stop any kind of rebellion. So Indians didn't get any kind of material benefit from it, but they were taxed heavily to meet the cost of the railways. Next is, the Indian traders had to pay higher freight charge while the foreign merchants paid lower freight. The Indian passengers had to face discrimination while traveling in the higher class. So, the Indian merchants who had to transport their material via railways, they gave more freight charge to the Britishers as compared to their British counterparts. On the other hand, the Indians who used railways for civilian purposes, they were also discriminated in railway compartments. Next is the engines and other parts were not built in India. Thus, huge amount of money were spent to import the parts of the railways. The Indians were debarred from appointment in the higher post of the railways. According to the report of the Ackworth Commission, only 10% post of officers in the railways were open to the Indians. So, as engines, compartments, bogies, rail lines, they were not built in India, they were all imported from England. So, huge amount of money was spent on the import of these parts. And next was the Indians were not given higher jobs in railways. They were just given the jobs of putting coal in the engines. Okay, so only 10% jobs, and that were also group D jobs, they were only open for Indians. The Indians were not given higher jobs in the railways. So this is the answer to our second question, where we were to discuss about the demerits of railways. So next is question number 3. State any 4 reasons to explain the effectiveness of the introduction of the railways in India. So we are to describe effectiveness. What is the meaning of effectiveness? Effectiveness means its merits. So we are to explain the merits in this question. The answer to this question is given on page number 1.7, merits. First merit. The railway served as a link between different provinces. India's physical unity was really felt along with the cultural and intellectual contact among different regions. The Italian statesman Cavour had once said that railways were road to unity and civilization. The same remark fits in Indian conditions too. People of one part of the country could travel to another region for work and other purposes. So, first merit of railways was that it created a link between different provinces. So, people now could move quickly and fastly from one part of the country to another. So, now the country was physically united by the railways. Second point is people from different regions now flock to the metropolitan cities like Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras. New urban centers grew and were linked with one another. A pan Indian feeling became strong. So, with the help of the railways, people could move from one part of the country to another. Most of the people, they moved for employment to the metropolitan cities like Bombay, Madras, Calcutta, Madras, Chennai. So it led to the growth of new urban centers in India. Thirdly, the educated middle class could communicate and exchange views with each other, which gave impetus to the growth of Indian nationalism. So the educated middle class people, they could communicate and exchange their views. So it led to the growth of nationalism in India. Finally, side by side with the spread of English education and newspaper made communication deeper among the Indian intellectuals and the enlightened middle class. So, with the help of the railways, newspapers could also move from one part of the country to another. So, it led to the growth of more enlightenment and nationalism in India. So, next question is brave and bold measure which ended uncertainty of land tenure due to yearly farming of land. It is an excerpt from Firminger's fifth report, year is 1794. With reference to the permanent settlement, we are to answer the following questions. First question is, state any four terms of the settlement. So it is actually an excerpt based question or statement based question, where is a statement from a report or any kind of speech is given, and then we are to refer to that statement and answer the questions. So it is 8 marks question, and it has two subparts. First is we are to write any four terms of the settlement. Any four terms of the settlement, and settlement here is permanent settlement, means we are to write any four terms of permanent settlement in India. So the answer to this question is given on page 1.12. So as we know that permanent settlement was introduced on 22nd March 1793 by Lord Cornwallis. So we will be writing terms of permanent settlement. The answer to this question is given on page 1.12. So there are total 7 terms of the statement that are given, and we are to write any 4 to 5 statements. First is, the zamindars would henceforth enjoy ownership of land on hereditary basis. So the zamindars, they became the owners of the land, and they became the owners of land on hereditary basis, means the son of the zamindar would become zamindar. It means the land would be transferred to him. Next is, they could now sell, mortgage, or make a gift of their zamindari right of land. So the zamindars, as they were the owners of the land, they could sell their land, they could mortgage it और make a gift of it. What is mortgage? Mortgage का मतलब होता है किसी चीज को एज एक टोकन रख के उसके ऊपर किसी भी प्रकार का कोई भी लोन लेना. सो नेक्स्ट इज, सो लॉन्ग दे वुड पे the land revenue regularly to the authority, their zamindari right would be impeachable. So, until and unless the zamindars were paying their taxes to the government, they would be the zamindars. It means the government could not withdraw or take away their zamindari right from the zamindars. In case of default, failure to obey the sunset law of the last day of the calendar year, their zamindari would be confiscated and put to auction. So, in the third point, we read that they were to pay regularly their dues to the government. If by any chance or any mistake they did not pay their land revenue to the government, their zamindari would be confiscated and their whole lands would be put to auction. The amount of revenue payable by the zamindars to the authority would never be enhanced. So the amount that they were paying to the government, they would never be enhanced. Okay, so next is we were to write any 4 points. Next part of the question is, discuss any 2 reasons each for the support of Cornwallis to the settlement and the failure of the settlement. In this question, we are to discuss any 2 points which Cornwallis supported permanent settlement, and any 2 points which led to the failure of the settlement. So the answer to this question is on page number 1.13. So Cornwallis justified the permanent settlement on the following grounds. First, agriculture would prosper as rights and liabilities were clearly defined. Cornwallis was of the view that agriculture in India, it would prosper because now the rights and liabilities were defined. Second is, frequent transfer of land owners due to the annual auction would no more plague the system. There would be permanent zamindars owning the land. So Cornwallis knew that when we were transferring the zamins or the lands to people, it plagued the system. It means it made the system inefficient. So he was of the view that now this system would not plague the revenue system in India. Cornwallis expected that zamindars would henceforth invest capital for improvement of irrigation system for better production of crops. So as we have read that the land revenue would never be enhanced, so he was of the view that the zamindars would invest their capital in the improvement of irrigation system. When the irrigation system would improve, it would lead to the better production and it would add to zamindars money. He also expected that zamindars would grant permanent right to the riots on their land. Cornwallis, he also expected that the zamindars, they would also give permanent ownership to the riots, that is the farmers who were tilling the land. Actually zamindars were not tilling the land, they had given land to the farmers or the tillers. So next part of the question was that we were to write any two causes for the failure of the system. So the answer to this question is also on page 1.13. These zamindars misused their right over the land. They enhanced land revenue to any amount, ruined the cultivators, extracted higher rent from them, or evicted them by force or treachery, and let loose zulm upon cultivators to satisfy their greed of wealth. So these zamindars, they misused their right over the land. They enhanced land revenue to any amount, and it ruined the cultivators. Okay. So the second point is that naibs, gomostas of these zamindars also harassed the cultivators by false litigation in court of law. After evicting the existing cultivator, they resettled the land with a new cultivator at a higher rate. The authority failed to protect the cultivators and lands now became private property of the zamindars. The zamindars did not grant even patta to the cultivator. The regulation number 8 of 1793 regarding grant of patta became a dead letter. So नेक्स्ट पॉइंट हमारा क्या आता है कि जो ज़मींदार के जो नायब थे, मीन्स कि आगे जो इन्होंने अपने काम के ऊपर जो जिनको इन्होंने एम्प्लॉय किया हुआ था, वो कल्टीवेटर्स को हरास करते थे. कैसे? उनके ऊपर फॉल्स केस चला देते थे, ओके, इन द कोर्ट ऑफ लॉ. सो उस फॉल्स केस के अकॉर्डिंगली जो कोर्ट थी उनको ज़मीन से निकाल देती थी. तो वो ये फिर जितने भी ज़मींदार थे वो लैंड किसे दे देते थे? उस बंदे को जो कि उस लैंड का आगे ज़्यादा पैसा देता था. सो जो अथॉरिटीज़ थी वो अथॉरिटी जो किसान थे, किसान्स को प्रोटेक्ट नहीं कर पाई, ओके. और जो पटे वाली डीड थी, पटे वाली डीड का क्या मतलब आता है कि जैसे किसी किसान को 50 ईयर्स के पटे के ऊपर ज़मीन दे दी, 99 ईयर्स के पटे के ऊपर ज़मीन दे दी, वो भी ज़मींदार किसी को भी पटे के ऊपर ज़मीन नहीं दे रहे थे. Okay, so these are the 2 points for the failure of the settlement. So today we discussed these 4 questions, okay, and your homework is that you are to write all these 4 questions in your homework notebook. I will be posting the pictures of this question also, and you are to send me your answer by 3 p.m. today. Okay, thank you so much.